We continue now at the top of Daf Metzia Daf and Meseches Bava Metzia. This is Bava Metzia Daf 39a. On the previous summit, the Gemara asked, what's the difference between Netushim and Retushim? Both indicate a kind of abandonment of a person's property. And the Gemara now explains, Netushim de Bal Karcha. Netushim is when the person abandons his property against his will. T'chsiv, as it's written in the Pasuk, V'ashvias Tishmetenu Natasha, that in the Shemitah year, you let the land rest, you let it lay fallow. And the idea there is Afkata de Malka. That's an Afkata de Malka, means it's a commandment from the king. Meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu is forcing you, so to speak, to abandon the land. That's the language of Netushim. And Retushim, what does Retushim mean? Demidait, and that's when you abandon the land willingly. T'chsiv, as it's written in the Pasuk, Eim al bonim rutasha, which means to say that the mother with the children is abandoned. And Rashi explains, Hachi Garsina Netushim al Karcha. Netushim means against their will. Dechsiv Hashvias Tishmetenu Natashta. Hainu al Karcha means to say that the land is resting against the person's will. Afkata de Malka means mitzvah samelech. It's a commandment from the king. It's a commandment from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Rashi continues, Retushim midaiton. Retushim means willingly. Dechsiv, as it's written, Eim al bonim rutasha. The mother is forsaken with her children. Hainu midaito. Again, it means to say willingly velo shivya. Not, and it does not mean taken captive. Dechsiv reishit dekra, because it's written in the beginning of the pasuk, "V'kam sha'on ba'amecha." There's going to be a war against your nation. Hayu yireim shelo yavo oivim aleim. They're afraid that the enemies will attack them. V'chol mivtzarecha yushad, and all your fortresses, they're all going to be ravaged. Yiglu begola me'elei. And again, it means that they're going to exile themselves. V'yisharu ha'yoros shedudin me'einish, and the cities will be empty. There won't be any people there. Keshod shalman beis arbel b'yom milchama. That's a continuation of the pasuk, and it means to say keshodedin haboin la milchama al yedei ma'orev alam hayoshe b'shalom. It's like people who are attacking in ambush against the people that are sitting in peace. Shelo nizharu behem livroach mipneihem, meaning they were not careful enough to run away. V'shodedim es hakol, and then they plunder everything. V'chamo, we find a similar pasuk in Yirmiyah, Haglas Yehuda Kula Haglas Shalomim mitoch yeshivas shalom. It means again they're settled in peace. Be'ein machre, they're not afraid. Haglam Nebuchadnezzar, that's how Nebuchadnezzar exiled them. Beis Arbel Targum Yehonasan Beis Ma'arev. The term Beis Arbel in the pasuk, according to the translation of Yehonasan, is a Beis Ma'arev, means to say an ambush. Aleph Lamed Yiseirimbo. That Aleph Lamed at the end is actually extra. That's this Aleph Lamed at the end. It really just means like Arev, like an ambush. Kemo Yanuas Yisrael, we find the same thing by Yanuas Yisrael. The Aleph Lamed are extra. Shu Lashon Zriya, that's like a language of planting. Velo Lashon Ir, it's not the language, it's not like the name of a city. Umideko Amar Yushad Keshod Shalman Beis Arbel. And now Rashi says, from the fact that it says again they're plundered in this manner, Mechlal Dahu Yoma Lav Beis Arbel B'Yom Milchama Havi. That sounds like that on that particular day, it wasn't a day of ambush, it wasn't a day of war. Elamorach Babelivim, rather they were afraid. Vehema Ozvim Emal Banim. And then they left, and the mothers and the children were forsaken. They left because of the worry of the enemy. Maybe the enemy is going to attack them. And so that's how you see again that the word retushim means to say that they left willingly. And the Gemara continues, Tana was taught, V'kulam shaman lahem ka'aris. In all of these cases, we evaluate the person like a sharecropper. This is talking about a situation, again, of abandoned property, and somebody goes to manage the property, and it's saying that that person is treated like a sharecropper. And Rashi explains, V'chulan mefarish l'kamea hayakai. Later on, we'll explain exactly what case we're going on. Uchlala la'isuyemai, and also the generalization over here, what it's coming to include. Shaman lahem ka'aris means they're like a sharecropper. Im yavo habayla, meaning let's say the owners return, the owners of this abandoned property return. Yitlu elu b'shevach karkos upero. So these people who manage the property, they're going to be able to take from the improvement of the property and from the produce, keminog arise hamakom, like whatever the custom is of the sharecroppers of that place, whether it be a half or a third or a fourth, whatever the minhag is, that's what they are going to take. And the Gemara continues Ahaya. So on which case exactly, what exactly is the situation where they're taking over this property? Ilema Shvuyin, if you say that we're going on the case of Shvuyin where they're taking captives, and as the Gemara said in the previous summit, that means to say that we have heard that the owners have died. So Hashta Zorez Viniskar Have, in that case we said that if the person is quick, he can actually profit and take the entire thing, much more than a sharecropper. So Maida Ashbach Miboy, do we even need to say that he gets the improvement? Of course he's going to get the improvement in that case, so we can't be talking about that. Ela retushim, so rather you're going to talk about a case where they leave willingly. V'hamotzia no son miyado, but there it says on the contrary. V'hamotzia no son miyado katani. There it says we actually take it away from these people who manage the property. They're not allowed to take from that property. And so the Gemara says, Ella rather on Netushim. You have to say we're going on that middle case of Netushim. That's a situation where we did not hear that they died, but the Gemara says Laman. But again, according to whom we had a machlokas tanoim by Netushim. Ilema the Rabbanon. If you say we're going according to the Rabbanon ha'amri, but they say Motzia no somiyado, that again we take the property away from them. And here Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, and if we're going with Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, ha'amar, but he said Shamati sha Netushim keshvuyin. He said that the Netushim are identical to the Shvuyin, and again by the Shvuyin we said Zoriz v'niskar. And so the Gemara says, Keshvuyin velo shvuyin. What he means is they're like the case of Shvuyin, but not exactly. Keshvuyin de'in motziin osan miyadu. They're like the Shvuyin that we don't take it away from them. We don't take away the property. Velo shvuyin, but not exactly like Shvuyin. De'ilu hasam zarz v'niskar. Whereas over there we say zarz v'niskar. Ve'ilu hacha. Whereas over here we say, by the case of Netushim, we say shayminan like aris. We say that we evaluate the person and he gets like an aris, like a sharecropper. And Rashi explains, Hashda Zorz Viniskar Have. Again, in the case of the Shvuyin, we say Zorz Viniskar, the person can be quick and can take the entire thing. V'yital Hakol, he gets everything. Te'ilu Hasam Zorz Viniskar. So then the Gemara said, no, there's a difference. By Shvuyin, we say Zorz Viniskar. Tekevon Sheshamu Bo Shemei, since they heard that the person died, Ki Nochas La Adaita the Kulhu Piri Nochas. When the person went down to manage that property, he had the understanding he was going to get all of the produce. Aval Hacha, but over here, the Lo Shamu Shemei, where they didn't hear that he died, Lava Daita the Kulanach is not going down to get the entire property. Elalitol Karis Bechal Shan, he's just taking like a sharecropper every year. Ushar Peiros Yumunachan, and all the rest of the produce that just essentially remains until the person returns or until Eliyahu Navi comes, until we're able to clarify. And the Gemara continues, but what's the difference between the above and the following Mishnah Meseches Ksubis? It says, by Nichse Milug, Hamotzi Otzos al Nichse Ishto, if somebody spends money on this property of his wife, again by Nichse Milug, the wife is the one who's considered to be the owner of the property, the actual principal, and then the husband, he's able to work the property, he gets the produce, he gets the fruits, and so then while they are married, he is spending money on this property, Hotzi Harbe V'achal Kimel, let's say he spends a lot of money, but he only gets very little out of it, or the opposite, he spends very little, but he gets a lot out of it. And then what ends up happening is there's a divorce or he dies and the property goes to his wife. So we just say, Masha Hotzi Hotzi, whatever he spent, he spent. Umasha Achal Achal, whatever he consumed, he consumed. And that means to say that he doesn't get paid like a sharecropper. The Gemara is asking what's the difference that is the case by Nichse Melug. And Rashi explains, Nichse Ishto Nichse Melug, Shu Ochel Peiros Va'Keren Shalom. Again, by Nichse Melug, he gets the fruit, he gets the produce, and she gets the principal. Hotzi Harbe Va'achal Peiros Kimmel, let's say he spent a lot, ate very little, Kodem Shemeso Shagersha, before he died or before he divorced her. And again, the Gemara is asking, why is that different? And the Gemara answers, Halo Damya El Laha. The case above with the abandoned property is actually more comparable to the following case. We'll see the Mesoras Hashas, how he changes the Girsa. But in any case, the following case is as follows. Hamotzi Otzos al Nichse Ishto Ketana. Let's say somebody spends money on the property of his wife, but his wife is a minor. This is a situation where he has a Kiddushin Midrabanan, and she can really refuse this marriage if she wants to. So that's Kemotzi al Nichse Acher Dami. That's already similar to spending money on somebody else's property, managing somebody else's abandoned property. And the idea, says the Gemara, is as follows. Alma, we see Kavan de lo Samcha Daite, since he's not really relying on this relationship to continue, because again she might refuse the marriage. So Takinu le Rabbanan, the Rabbanan instituted that he can take like a sharecropper, Kihechi de lo Lifsidinu, so that he doesn't destroy the property. He now has a real stake in the profits of the property. So Hachanami, so here also by the abandoned property that he's managing, Takinu le Rabbanan, the Rabbanan institute that he takes like a sharecropper, Kihechi de lo Lifsidinu, in order that he does not destroy the property. And the Mesoras Hashas says, you can see over here, it says, Ditnan, as we learned in a Mishnah, the Mesoras Hashas says, Tzarech Lomar Da'amar of Yaakov, Amar of Chisda, V'chein hu b'chsubas Pei Amar Aleph. It's actually a statement from Rav Yaakov, from Rav Chisda. That's how it's found in Ksubas. It's not actually a Mishnah. And Rashi explains over here, Holo Damya Teirutzu. The Gemara here is giving an answer and saying that our case of managing property is more similar to a relationship with a girl that's a minor. The case of Nichse Shavuyin is more comparable to a case where his wife is a minor. It means to say, Ketana she Yisoma, she's an orphan, she doesn't have a father. She Siyua Ima V'yacheh, and then her mother or her father married her off. Ve'in Kiddushin Tovsin B'min HaTorah. There's no Kiddushin on a Doraisa level. Elami Divrei Sofrim. Rather, the Kiddushin is Derabanan. son. Lafikach yotze b'mi, and therefore she's allowed to leave the marriage by refusing. Bal karcho, that could be against his will, him to mine if she refuses. Kimotzi al nechse acher dami. So there we treat it like spending money on somebody else's property. V'im hotzi v'lo achal kadei hotza. So let's say he spends money and he doesn't get back that which he spent. Shamin lo karis. So then he gets like an aris, he gets like a sharecropper. And the idea is de lo samcha daite. He's not relying. She muchsak b'yado. He doesn't know that he'll keep this property. De doeg shemet to moinbo, because he's worried maybe she'll refuse the marriage. Takinu le rabbanan lital karis. So therefore the rabbanan say he takes like a sharecropper. Ki hechi de lo nifsedinu shelo yikalkel hakarkos. This way he doesn't ruin the land. Lezoran tamet, to constantly plant them. V'lo yavod v'lo yadar akramim. But he's not going to work the land properly. He's not going to prune the vineyards properly. And therefore, in order to encourage him to take care of the property, that's why we treat him like a sharecropper in that situation. And the Gemara continues, V'chulon shamin lehem ka'aris. In all of these cases, we evaluate them like a sharecropper. And the Gemara says, V'chulon le'suye mai. This language of all of them, what does that come to include? And the Gemara says, Le'suye hadam Rav Nachman amar Shmuel. It's to include the following from Rav Nachman, that Rav Nachman said that Shmuel said, Shavoi shenishba, if you have a captive that's taken captive, Moridin karov l'nechasav, we have a relative manage the property. Yatzel adas, but if the person leaves willingly, ein moridin karov l'nechasav, then we don't have a relative manage the property. And this is the case we're coming to include. Rav Nachman didei amar, and Rav Nachman himself says, boreach, if somebody runs away, harehu kashavai, that's the same as a captive. And in that case as well, we're going to have a relative manage the property and be like an aris, be like a sharecropper. And the Gemara clarifies, boreach machmas mai. Well, what is he running away from? Ilema machmas karga, if you say that he's running away because of the taxes that he can't pay, hainu ladas, that's really the same thing as going willingly. It's not a situation where a person is rushed and forced to leave in a hurry, and so therefore in that case, that's going to be the same as ladas, where we don't have the relative manage the property. And so the Gemara says, Ela boreach machmas mardin. Rather, what Rav Nachman means is the person is running away because he's accused of murder. There already he's running away in a rush. It's a situation where he's running in a hurry, and there we would say that it's considered to be like a shavoi, and we say moridin karov l'nechasav, and we evaluate that relative as though he's an aris. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says, Shavoi shenishba, if somebody's taken captive, v'hiniach kama liktzor, anavim livtzor, tamarim ligdor, zeisim limsok, and he leaves, he has wheat that has to be harvested, or grapes, or dates, or olives, all that have to be harvested. Bezdin yordan l'nechasa, Bezdin goes down to his property, uma'amidin apetropis, they set up a caretaker, v'kodzer uvotzer v'goder umosik, and he takes care of what needs to be taken care of right now, harvesting or collecting the grapes or dates, etc. And then after that's taken care of, we have a relative take over and manage the property. And the Gemara says, well, why not have a caretaker forever? And the Gemara says, and we don't set up caretakers when you're talking about older people. That's only for younger people, younger orphans. And Rashi explains, Le'isuye had Rav Nachman, it's to include Rav Nachman's case, which is Boreach Machmas Mordin, somebody who runs away because he's accused of murder. Yatzel Ladas Ein Moridin, if the person leaves willingly, then we don't have someone come down and manage the property. Tekevan Sheyashafoi Bedaito Velo Tzivo Belechto, since he left calmly and gave no instructions, Leired L'Nechasav, to go and manage his property, Shma Mino Lo Nichale, we see that he doesn't really want a person to manage his property. And Rashi continues, Boreach Hareu Kashavai, if somebody's running away is like a captive, Shein Daito Miyusheves Olav Machmas Shubal. The idea is that the person is not calm, the person is very hurried, and so there he's already like somebody taken captive, and we do manage the property. Machmas Karga, now if he's leaving because of the tax, Shein Lo Mimal Lifro, I mean he doesn't have money to pay the tax, Kesav Gugolosu Lamelech, he can't pay the king, Uvoreach Lifnei Bo Hazman, and so he's running away before the time for collection comes. So Hainu Yotze Ladas, that's the exact same thing as leaving willingly, Shein Kan Behala, he's not hurried, but Machmas Mordin, but if he's running away because he's accused of murder, Shaharagas HaNefesh, he killed someone who parsoi, Hargan al Shvichus Damim, and the Persians they kill because of murder. Kedaminim Babba Kama, like we say in Babba Kama, Mordin he Ritzicha B'Lashon Parsi. Mordin is murder in Persian. V'chein Mefurish B'Sharim de Rav Haigon, that's also the explanation given by Rav Haigon. Ma'amidin apetropis, and then it said what we do is, let's say you have the stuff in the field or the stuff in the vineyard is ready to be harvested, so at first we have an apetropis take over, Lahachnes Davar Hamuchan, in order to bring in whatever needs to be prepared prepared. V'yei shomer l'baylav. That way everything will be in order for the owners. V'yachar kach moridin karav l'hashbiach v'litol karis. Then we bring in a relative. The relative can try to improve the property, and he can take like a sharecropper. V'lukim apotropos liolam. Why not have the apotropos forever? Shelo yitol klum. Let's not have a relative take anything. Let's let a caretaker take care of the property the whole time. And to that the Gemara said apotropo l'diknani lo mukminan, which means ein bezin tarchin levakesh apotropos la'anoshim gedolim. Bezin is not going to bother trying to find an apotropos for an adult person. Shenismali zakonim. The idea of l'diknani is they have a full beard. Lefi shelo yimtzu, because you can't really find an apotropos for that. The bishlam liyasmi. It makes sense for an orphan who's a minor. Ika deshama luhu v'have apotropos lidvar mitzvah. There a person will be an apotropos. He'll essentially do a mitzvah to help the orphans. Aval l'diknani, but already for an older person, lo shami luhu. So that already the person, you're not going to be able to find somebody who heard about the situation, so to speak, and is willing to be an apotropos for this case. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Amar Rav Huna says, Ein moridin katan l'nichsei shavi. We don't have a minor go and manage property for the property of someone who is taken captive. V'lo karov l'nichsei katan. We don't have a relative manage property for the property of a minor. V'lo karov machmas karov l'nichsei katan. We don't also have a relative of a relative for the property of a minor. Rashi will explain that. Ein moridin katan l'nichsei shavi. The Gemara now explains, we don't have a minor take over the property of a captive. Dilma mafsidlu, because we're afraid he might destroy the property. V'lo karov machmas karov l'nichsei katan. We don't have a relative from a relative take care of the property of a katan. That is ba'achi me'ima. That's talking about a brother through the mother's side. V'lo karov l'nichsei katan. We don't have a relative take care of the property of a minor. Kevan de lo machi asilach zuke bei. The reason is because a minor isn't able to protest. He's not able to assert his rights over the property, and therefore we're afraid that the relative will actually take over the property and essentially steal it from the minor. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rava says, Shmami nemi de Rav Huna. We see from Rav Huna, Ein machzikin b'nichsei katan. You can't make a chazak in the property of a minor. And Rashi explains, Ein moridin katan l'nichsei shavei. First of all, we don't have a minor take care of the property of a captive. V'afilu roi liyarshu. Even if this katan is the one that is set to inherit the captive, to come afsidlu, because we're afraid he's going to destroy the property. Umutav sheyoridu lam yishnachri. Better to just have a stranger take care of the property. V'lo karov. We don't have a relative haroi liyarish b'nichsei katan la'asos v'lechol. We don't have a relative who is able to inherit the property of the minor. We don't have him take care of the property. K'demisayim time is, we're going to say the reason. The kaven the katan lo yada l'mechuye, since a katan doesn't know how to protest. Asahai karav lachsuke behen. The relative is going to end up taking possession. V'lomer l'chalek yerushaso ba v'tov lahem lordish nachri. He's going to say, I'm taking the yerusha, I'm dividing up the yerusha, and it's better again to have a stranger do it. The lo matzi limitan bu yerusha. That way the person can't claim inheritance. If you do a relative, so the relative can claim to be inheriting the property, he's essentially going to be able to steal the property from the minor. V'lo karov machmas karov l'nichsei katan. You also don't have a relative from a relative take care of the property of the minor. Kagon katan sheyesh lo ach me'av. The case would be as follows: a katan has a brother through his father. V'yoso ach me'av yesh lo ach me'em, and then that brother from the father has a different brother through his mother. The ish nachri yoetz katan. The point over here is that this person is a stranger in reference to the minor. He's related to the relative of the minor. Ein moridin oso ach me'em l'nichsei katan. We don't let that brother from the mother take care of that property of the katan, machmas kurvas achiv shel zeh shu ach shel katan, because again there's this other brother who is the brother of the minor. We're afraid that this is all a kind of a conspiracy of them taking over the property. He's going to take it over for the brother, for his brother. The guy who's taking care of the property is going to say, oh, this property actually belongs to my brother through my mother's side. It came to him from his father. And they're really all coming. They're really all coming to try to divide the property among themselves. So even in that situation, the point is a relative of a relative. Even there we are afraid that he is trying to steal the property. Ba'achi me'ima, again, a brother from the mother. Kidefarishas, like Rashi says, like I just explained. Shezeh ach min ha'em. This person is a brother, a maternal brother, la'achav shel katan min ha'av, to the paternal brother of the minor. That's actually what the Gemara means. Shma mina me Rav Huna, and then the Gemara said, we see from Rav Huna that you cannot make a chazak in the property of a katan, meaning, to amar ein moridan karav l'nichsei katan. He says that we're not allowed to have a relative take care of the property of a katan, shama yachzik behem machmas yerusha, because again, maybe he'll make a chazaka due to inheritance. Aval acher, what's the point though? Aval acher, but let's say it would be a different person who's not a relative, she'ein lo tainas yerusha, who has no claim of inheritance, moridin. So then apparently we would let that person manage the property. V'lo chayshin shama yiton aviv shel zeh mecharmli, and we're not afraid that this stranger is going to claim that, oh, this the father of this minor sold it to me. V'achaltem shnei chazak, and I've been here the years necessary to to make a chazaka, generally 3 years. So shma mina, so you see from all of this, ein machzikim b'nechsei katan. That's not a concern, because really a person is not allowed to establish a chazaka by the property of a minor, im lo achal b'fnei ha'av shalosh shanim, unless he was consuming and using the property for 3 years in front of the father. Only then would it be a chazaka. Ein shalosh shanim sha'acholan b'fnei ha'katan chazaka. The 3 years that he's using the property in front of the minor is not considered to be a chazaka. Again, if you're using property for 3 years, it's generally presumed that that property is yours, but that's only if it would be by an adult. If you're using it for 3 years and the counterclaim is from an adult, then you say you've established a chazaka, it's your property. But if you're doing that and the counterclaim is being made by a minor, that's not a chazaka at all. You can't make a claim to the property from a minor, even if you've been on the property for 3 years, because the katan could never have protested. The katan wasn't able to protest, and the chazaka is based on the fact that you've been there 3 years with no protest. We will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Tes Amud Beis.